Welcome to the Convergent Impact Leadership Podcast. I'm Eric Savickas, a leadership coach, retired Army officer, and someone who cares deeply about building people-centered leadership in the fire service. This podcast is a place for honest conversations, practical insights, and leadership ideas that help teams grow stronger inside the firehouse and beyond. Whether you're leading a crew or shaping a department, I am glad you're here. Today, I am very excited to be joined by Chief Lisa Pine, Chief of the Professional Qualifications and Training Section and State Fire Training Director for the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control. Chief Pine brings more than 27 years of experience working with diverse stakeholder groups to address complex issues and build collaborative solutions. Before entering the fire service, she spent 14 years as an environmental planner and public outreach specialist, supporting major infrastructure projects across Colorado and helping guide complex environmental review processes. She joined the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control in 2015 as a training and safety officer, working with fire departments statewide to ensure firefighters have the training and resources they need to stay safe and serve their communities. She later served as administrator for the Colorado Fire Commission, helping facilitate statewide collaboration on key fire service issues. Today, as the State Fire Training Director and Section Chief for Professional Qualifications and Training, she helps guide training standards and professional development for firefighters across Colorado. Chief Pine holds 2 master's degrees, one in geography and one in leadership, and is a graduate of the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program. Lisa, I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Oh, you're very welcome, Eric. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to where this conversation takes us.
So I've known you since 2019 when I first got involved in starting to do a leadership training for the fire service here in Colorado, but I have never had a conversation with you about your story and what got you into the fire service. So I'm curious. I know your experience from going through your bio is a little bit different than most. Can you talk to us about what first drew you into the fire service and got you interested?
So honestly, it's a long story because back in 2000, no, actually back in 1996, there was a little fire, about 12,000 acres in Jefferson County called the Buffalo Creek Fire. At that time, I was in graduate school working on my geography degree, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what thesis I wanted to really study. And I got hooked up with the U.S. Geological Survey, some folks there that were doing research for Denver water at the impacts of the Buffalo Creek Fire on the Structure Springs Reservoir. So I came at fire from an academic standpoint back then, completed my work, which is really about hill slope erosion processes, and finished that in 2002, and then took a break. I didn't realize I was setting a foundation for something I would later upend my entire career for. I enjoyed the topic. I thought it was fascinating, really interested in the dynamics of how fire impacts the landscape and impacts the environment. But again, I thought I was just going to go off and be an environmental planner for the rest of my life. Then in 2008, my husband and I moved to Genesee, and somebody knocked on our door and said, "Hey, we have a volunteer fire department. You should join." And we're like, "Okay." Like, I don't know. About 40 years old. I'm like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." I didn't realize, the volunteer fire service in some of these communities are, those of us in our 40s and more. So joined that, started Academy, I want to say in January of 2010. Loved every minute of it. Was like, "Oh my God, this is so much more fun than planning." And no offense to the people that do this for a living, but planning like highways taking over people's backyards, where I came up with ill thought through websites like you didn't want to mow that anymore.com. Nobody cared for my sense of humor. So I thought the fire service is great. They have my sense of humor. We're giving back to the community. You feel pretty cool walking around in your bunker gear. It just felt great. At the time, I was working for actually CDPHE in the Water Quality Control Division. I had moved over there helping with water and wastewater treatment plant environmental clearances. And if you've ever been at a wastewater treatment plant, the people that work there are very proud of their plants, and for whatever reason want to spend a lot of time in the headworks talking about how great their plant is. Have smell issues, so that was a place to be. So getting out, smelling fire, being with people, learning things, getting my EMT was just really exciting. And then an opportunity arose in 2012 to move into a paid position in Genesee, uh, then a full-time position there. and it just felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. And what I learned out of that was being with a volunteer fire department was training is to me the most important position on any fire department. I will say that till I die, and fire chiefs will argue that. A lot of people will argue that, but I do believe in my heart of hearts that if you have a good training officer, you have a strong department. So that
So,
was kind of a very
couple of
long, circuitous route to get to where I am today.
no, I love it. A couple questions though. So, when that person in Genesee knocked on your door, did they have any idea that you had done some thesis work that tied some fire behavior into your other work, or was it just totally random? We're trying to get as many people as we can.
Totally random. She lived on the same cul-de-sac we did, and I guess, I'm pretty sure she probably did that to every new person that moved into any house in the area. But that's how you get volunteers. I mean, it's really the putting up the signs and trying to encourage people is one thing, but actually showing up with an application in hand is a great way to get people, well, at least people that are susceptible to that kind of thing. Like, I guess my husband and I were at the time. We're like, "Yeah, cool. Sounds
Yeah.
fun."
And so, going to the academy at age 40 with a bunch of younger folks, I assume, how's that CPAT and other stuff work out for you?
Well, so no, we didn't. My academy, I think, we were all about the same age. There were 5 of us that went through, and I think we were all about the same age. The median age probably of Genesee's volunteer fire department was probably in its 40s. I mean, it's a more of a bedroom community, to Denver. And so that wasn't so hard. I mean, yes, the physical was hard. All of that was hard. That wasn't hard. But actually, after I kind of got bit by the bug in 2011, 2012. I did tests with West Metro, South Metro, anybody that had an open test. And back then, you'll know it was a very, very, very competitive. I think there were 1,500 people that applied that year for West Metro, whichever year I did it. And that's where it came to, there's no extra points for being a woman. There's no extra points for being older. You do it or you don't do it. You take the written test, you take the physical test, you either can or you can't. And I just, amongst all of the people, I think for me personally, I did really well. I scored in the 80s on both parts of the test, but that wasn't enough to make the list, and that's fine. You want the best people. But yeah, it was a struggle. And looking at some of these folks that are in peak physical conditioning in their early 20s and thinking, I'm not sure I can beat them, but I put everything I had on the table for those. And then, when that didn't work and I found the opportunity to get paid to do work at Genesee, I gravitated towards that and said, okay, this is still good. This is still serving the community and this is still really important work.
Yeah, I briefly, when I retired from the Army, I briefly flirted with, well, what would a fire service or a police follow-on career be like? And then I remembered I take fistfuls of Motrin every day and my body hurts and maybe it's not the best. So how do you go from Genesee as first a volunteer and then in a paid position? How do you eventually get to DFPC?
So as I said, I think the training position is really critical. And so when I started into the paid position, it was sort of, there were 2 paid people. There was the fire marshal, and then there was the position that I had. And that was everything from maintenance to, purchasing to writing NFIRS reports or uploading the data for reporting. It was the whole gamut, and training was part of that. What I also realized is that I was on the department for 2 years before I became a lieutenant. That's a not very long. I have a lot of experience. We had about 250 calls a year. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I am responsible now for this whole group of folks on this scene. I better darn well know what I'm doing. And the only way I'm going to figure it out, because we didn't have that many calls, was to take classes, to learn, to get out there in front of people. I joined CFTOA at that time, the Colorado Fire Training Officers Association, started going to that. Through them, got a scholarship to go to leadership for the first time, the state chiefs conference, which was amazing. Opened my eyes to so many things. Went to 2013, I believe it was the Women in Fire Service. There was a conference up in Summit County that got me, and through all of those things, it just kept coming back to me. Training is important. I was lucky enough to meet Mark Quick at that time, and Marianne and Laura and the whole group that's still here, Marlinda, who were the certification program at DFPC at the time. And just through knowing him, talking about things that were important to me, not just at Genesee, but also statewide, was part of one of the things I did under CFTOA was help write the first, new training officer manual. I didn't know what I was doing. How do you get somebody through all of the training they need to do in a year when you're only training on the weekends, one weekend a month, or you're only doing a Thursday night a month? How do you manage the breadth of things we need to know how to do and we are asked to do on a daily basis when you don't have a lot of time to train? Who are those resources? What's out there? And so that book was the culmination of my own personal struggle to figure out everything I needed to know as a new training officer. And again, that just put me in contact with the staff over at DFPC. In 2014, I believe it was, AFG, the Assistance to Firefighter grants, were open to state fire training academies. So there's a separate pot of money that we can go after. Mark Quick went after a live fire training unit, our first one. And that, for him, what he would always say, and if he listens to this, I hope he remembers that he said this, but I believe this is good, that nobody's fire should be its first fire should be a real fire. You should train with fire before you have to go. And so that was the impetus, I think, behind getting that live fire training trailer and then hiring the first training officer, which I was lucky enough to be. So I spent that first summer of 2016 running around with all the volunteers. I did not do it by myself, but there was a great group of people throughout the state, firefighters that were willing to support and help me with training throughout the mostly rural areas. And so I think because of my work within CFTOA, the contacts I made there, the getting to know the people here at DFPC, I was very fortunate to get that job.
And I've heard you say that phrase before about someone's first fire, and I didn't know that came from Mark.
I'm
And
gonna
I don't
always
know if
attribute it to him, but he may say, "I never said that," and I'll be
do
embarrassed because
you
I've been saying that for 10 years now, 11. That's
yeah, and so because you've been saying it and because you've been, I assume, embodying it, do you now in your role embody that with the way that you run the section?
I hope so. I really hope so. One of the things we did after I took over this position in 2022 was create a coin for the section and a logo. And going around and round, the tagline is training for your life and theirs, because that's what I believe is that this is the work you do in training is what's going to make you have a long career and it's also going to help your community because you're going to be better able to serve. So I hope, and we've tried to grow and be more things to more people, and we've sort of shrunk that back to say, what are our roots? And our roots are the rural parts of Colorado that don't have access to training. They have I mean, it's not that they're not training, it's not, they're doing a great job. There are amazing firefighters throughout this whole state. But what we need, I believe, and I hope that's what we're doing for them, is providing some of that hands-on stuff they don't have access to by bringing the live fire trailer, the driving simulator, the pump unit, or just deploying for the first time this year. And I'm hopeful that those are the things, the tools that help them elevate their training to a level that gives them more confidence or understanding and lead to long, safe careers in the fire service, volunteer or career, it doesn't matter.
So let me transition to leadership here for a minute. I know you refer to yourself as a trainer and trainer being your passion. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you also consider yourself a leader? I know you're in a leadership position. And if so, and I'm trying to think of the right segue here, are all leaders trainers, but not all trainers leaders, or are they just different things?
I think it's different. So I would like to say I am a leader. I would like to say that. I only lead because people follow me. So are people following me or are people just feel like, get out of our way and let's see what happens? I'm not sure. It's really hard to do that introspection to say, yes, I am a leader. I believe I put the needs of the people I serve with ahead of anything else. I want them to be successful in their careers, whether it's when I was a training officer and I was working with firefighters, or here I'm working with training officers and the staff here at DFPC. So I hope it comes across that I'm a leader. Now there is a training component to leadership because you need to understand who you're working with. You need to understand, and I don't know if you want to call it training, you want to call it mentorship or coaching or what it is, but you can always see areas, I think, where people can grow. There's always growth to be had. You don't want to stand still. I believe I don't know if it's a Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song or it's something my mother used to say, but it was like better to wear out than rust out. Like, you keep moving, you keep growing, you keep learning. And I'm not sure my mom listened to them, but I do feel like it's a song from somewhere. Anyway, so there's a certain amount of looking at who you are leading, seeing where they could use some support to grow and then help foster that growth.
I
That is
love
in
that.
what I do. I hope that there may be some that listen to this and they're like, well, maybe you fall a little short of it, but that is my goal. That is what I strive for.
No, and you're right. And you shared with me earlier the phrase that leaders are only as good as the people who follow them. And that reminded me of this. I really love this Harvard Business Review article from, well, it's been 26 years now. It was in 2000. It was published. It was titled, Why Should Anyone Be Led by You? And I love the title more than the article itself. Not that it's a bad article, but just like thinking about the title, it's good for a leader to take a beat and say, "Am I doing the things that make people want to follow me? Not like me, but wanna follow me, and am I exhibiting good, positive leadership?" What does it mean to you when you say leaders are only good as the people who follow them?
I think we all know people who are in traditional leadership roles who do not have the skill set to actually lead people, who do not have the empathy, the awareness, the goal, the where are we headed, the ideas
Mm.
that people can buy into and want to follow. So if a leader is just saying, I'm a leader because of my position, I'm a positional leader, or I just am so smart in this area that I'm a leader. If nobody buys into what you're selling, then who are you leading? Nobody. And so that's why it is. And also the team that you create, the people that you support in a leadership role, they make you better, they make what you do better, and so there's 2 ways to look at it. You're only as good as the people that follow you because you have people that follow you, but you're only as good as the good people that follow you. You want the good, you wanna support them, you wanna energize them, you wanna get them all going towards the same overall goal. We swerve, we go in and out, it's not a straight path to get to those goals, but ultimately, if you're all end up at that goal together, then you're I believe that shows signs of being a good leader, and it shows signs that you really support your folks so that they can come along with you.
And I think the reality is if you didn't have your team, if you didn't have any of those people theoretically following you, if suddenly one day they were all gone, you'd still be a good human being, but you're no longer a leader, right? For to be there has to be 2 sides to that equation, the leaders and the followers to make it work. If you're a mountain guide helping an expedition up Everest and all of a sudden you didn't have any climbers with you and it was just you, then you're just a dude climbing the mountain, right? Like you're not a leader anymore.
And
And
it
I and that hurt unfortunately, I think that hurts some people because there's a common phrase or saying that people like to say that everybody's a leader, right? And to me, like, I get the sentiment that you want people to take initiative and you want people to do good work, and when you're lacking guidance, take charge, that kind of thing. But sometimes it feels like if you just say, "Well, everyone's a leader," it waters down really the hard work that goes into figuring out what it takes to get to lead a team.
Yeah, I see some people that are very strong leaders, they're amazing, and I wonder, is that, nature or nurture? Were they
Mm.
born as just innate ability to lead, or did they work? I read a lot. I work very hard at it. I don't know. Maybe there's some innate leadership skills in me, but I like to learn more. I like to understand different ways. Have learned so April 1st will be 4 years in this job. I have learned so much about the limits of my leadership skills as well as some of the really solid good parts of my leadership skills in this role, and it's just pushed me to want to learn more. So I think when you say, "Oh my god, that person's an amazing leader," I'd be hard pressed to think that that's just somebody that is innately just has it all inside them and doesn't need to do some work to get there. I think you're right. Not everybody is a leader. Some people are very comfortable spending their whole career in the back of the engine.
Yeah,
They
there's nothing
don't
wrong with
wanna
that.
they don't wanna be an officer. They love the work they're doing. You need those people too. You need everybody. Everybody on the engine has a role to play, and some people just can't wait to get to that right seat, that leadership position in anything. I'm just using fire as a metaphor, but it's there are some people that want that, there are some people that don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. So when you say everybody's a leader, you could be pushing people towards something that they're not comfortable with. Oh, they're executors, not violently. I just mean they execute the rule, the program, and they love doing that. But they can be leading in their own way in that moment. It's not that they're not it's not like they don't have the skills to motivate people and bring them along and all of that. It's just I think there's different I'm not sure if I'm making sense. You look puzzled.
Do you think that the fire service acknowledges that and is accepting of that? I think as I look back on my military career, there was pressure for people to promote. And if somebody said, I'm good where I'm at, it was almost like, well, what's wrong? Why don't you want to go to the next level? And why don't you want to take on a leadership role? And in fact, the military structure was such, at least at the time, like you couldn't retire until you achieved a certain rank, like officially retire. And so do you think the fire service is more accepting of, hey, if you want to be an engineer and that's your jam, go for it? Or you want to be the paramedic and stay that way? Do it.
I hope so, but I was never in a traditional career department, so I don't really know what that looks like, from that kind of thing. I mean, I was tapped to be a lieutenant, like I said, in 2 years because, well, a bunch of people left. There wasn't a lot it was just, volunteer department, you're running through, you don't get the luxury of saying, "I don't want to move up." I mean, some people I knew didn't, they didn't wanna do that, and a lot of it, I think, is the speed with which that was happening was a bit uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me because I did not have the knowledge base, the
Mm.
experience base, let me put it that way. I had a lot of knowledge, but I didn't have the experience to know what I was doing 100%, and that scared me into really working on developing more of the knowledge and understanding. So I don't wanna speak for the whole fire service in this way, but I do know people, Don DeStefano, who was here, who was a engineer for 30 years. And we're lucky enough to have him, and he's an amazing asset for our DO program. But I don't know if he ever felt pressure. I've never talked to him about it, but I know enough people who haven't. I don't know there's competition that can be very difficult. Some departments just don't end up with a lot of advancing roles just by their size, time, and position. So, but it's a little out of my comfort to say that be too definitive on that question.
So I know you don't want to speak for the fire service, but I got another big picture fire service question for you. So obviously, the fire service is a male dominated profession, traditionally at least. And you being a female in the fire service has given you a unique perspective on not only serving, but leading within that environment. I think when we talked at one time in the past, you mentioned that you don't necessarily subscribe to the idea of having to fit a certain mold or be exactly the same as others in order to be successful. But what's your take on a female serving and a female leading and being different yet being the same, or whatever it is that comes to mind when I kind of tee up that question, as in eloquently as that was?
That is a huge question. So I can really only talk to it from my perspective, but I hope this resonates with some people. This is a physically demanding job. When you're on the line, there's things that you need to do. However, the physique of a woman and a man are different. Our strengths come from different places. So it's not that they need to do jobs. They do different jobs. They do the same job, but we need to make sure they're taking advantage of their natural abilities. I'm going to be much stronger in my legs than I will in my shoulders. I feel like, and I believe, and I'm not a physiologist, I couldn't tell you that that is actually a difference between men and women, but I feel like I can do the dummy drag, I can do the hose lays, I can do all of these things, but I'm probably not gonna be using my shoulders as much as I'm gonna be using my legs to do it. So the difference is how we train people to make sure. And I think there's men and women. I mean, you can't just put them in one bucket, men versus women or whatever. It's different people have different strengths physically and mentally. And that's also part of leadership is understanding where are those strengths and capitalizing on those. Don't say everybody has to pull a hose or drag the dummy the exact same way because we all have different strengths. So there's 1,000 different ways to drag a dummy. I mean, you can do all sorts of different ways to do it, and you're gonna pick the one that's the best fit for your body type or where you are the strongest. That's what I think. However, I mean, I've heard there's enough stories out there of where there is, um harassment. There's all sorts of horrible things that go on in any industry. It's not just the fire service. I have been very fortunate that I don't feel like that has been an issue in my career. I've made it where I really wanted to be. And I've done it in a way that's pretty non traditional without spending years and years and years on the line. But I think I know enough to know what I can do to be supportive of the fire service in this position.
So is there, if you were and you are theoretically speaking to a bunch of fire service leaders or aspiring leaders or people just interested in leadership, is there any advice or thoughts you might give to leaders that may be struggling, saying, I get that there are differences, but if I have to think about how to do things differently for this person versus this person, or suggest ways to TTPs to drag a dummy differently for this person versus this person, it's going to get exhausting after a while rather than just saying, here's the task, here are the conditions, and here's the standard. Do it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we all have to get the same job done. You have to do your skill sheets. You got to pull that dummy. You got to pull that hose. You got to do it. You got to get it done. But I would say, if you are a strong training officer, training person, that you have to look at the skill set of the people you are working with. I don't think, and I think this is getting more and more now, new generation, however you want to think about it, where there's a lot of why am I doing it this way? It's important for people, both, again, physically and mentally, when they are working on something that's challenging, not to just be told this is the only way to do it. You either do it this way or you can't do it and you're out. Because I think you will lose some incredible people if you don't have the flexibility to say, okay, if you need to squat down and pull this person with your, more leg strength than arm strength, I think you're going to lose people that can bring so much to the fire service. So yes, it's a challenge, but that's training people. And you go through the hierarchy of like auditory learners, visual learners. And if you are going to take that in, why can't you take in some of this other stuff about changes, just differences in physical stature?
And maybe not look at it as exhausting or another step that you have to do, but maybe look at it as your team. And I've used this kind of analogy before, and I really like it. But maybe your team is like the X-Men, right? And you got someone like Wolverine that cuts and slashes. Instead of just saying, no, all we do is we punch and kick here in this organization. Sorry, Wolverine, you're not good. Maybe we think of all these people having different superpowers and figure out as leaders, oh, this is a situation where we need the cutting and slashing, and this is another situation where we need somebody to turn something into ice or whatever it is the X-Men do. But see it as a team of people that have lots of great abilities and skills, rather than it being a negative that, oh, I got to think about this person or this other person.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what we have to do just in life. Anytime you run into anybody, you have to kind of assess where they're at to interact with them, to train them, to lead them. There is no one size fits all. And I hope, and I'm sure, traditions are very important. This is how we do things. But if we're not careful, that will exclude people that have great gifts that can do wonderful things in the fire service and in any industry. So we have to be willing to be a little bit more open-minded about, yes, we have to get from point A to point B, but maybe there's a couple different ways to get there.
Right. And I'm sure, like, just like you said, point A to point B doesn't mean the standard isn't the standard. The standard is always the standard. You're not trying to say, hey, water it down over here or making it lesser over there. You're not making an argument about perceived fairness or equity or whatever. You're just saying, hey, I got some superpowers that I can bring to just like, the guy that goes in a baseball game and pinch hits, right? Really good in that moment to get on base. And, different people have different powers that they can bring.
Yeah, and it is critical to be clear. I would never say, I mean, the person that you are coming to the aid of does not care what who you are, what gender you are, what color you are, whatever. They're having the worst day of their life and they are asking you for help. So if you can help them, that's what matters, I think. And so, there's no like, okay, we're going to go A to B this way. Okay, you're a little weaker. So we're going to do it this way. You're a little, less chatty. So we're going to do it this way. Like no, you absolutely can't do that. The job is the job, but just understand there's different ways to get the job done.
Let's talk about DFPC a little bit. So you have a passion, obviously, for training, and you want make sure you can deliver that across the state. What are some things from your perspective are the biggest challenges that you're either facing from your perspective with statewide training, or you think that is a training challenge that departments are facing currently in 2026?
Well, I'll start from the big picture from the state from well, just training in general. I think anybody listening to this that has been with the fire department, if there's a budget crunch, you're not going to sacrifice PPE and safety. You're not going to sacrifice your apparatus that you need to run a call. I feel like the first place that they're going to cut is training. Maybe not so many conferences, maybe not so many outside instructors. And that holds true. So a few years ago, we came very close to making a significant expansion of the DFPs, the professional qualifications and training section. I think it was 15 additional FTE, a multitude of additional props, more money for getting out there and supporting. We do not charge, for the most part, we do not charge for the training that we provide. If we are providing food and we're doing it somewhere where they charge us for the room, then yes, we have to charge for that. But for us to come out, we don't charge anything. And we came very close to getting that and then came up against an idea that training can be funded through other mechanisms that fire departments already have access to. Their taxes, they've got plenty of money, which was a very unfortunate thought because yes, there are a lot of departments. I'm not going to say any department doesn't need financial support. I think every department probably has things that they need. But if you look maybe I-25 corridor, maybe there's not that many departments that are really struggling. But you go to some of the rural areas of Colorado where their budget is $5,000 a year and they got to keep, gas in the tank and they got to keep people in, excuse me, safe PPE. I think having a free training resource like the state is critical. So financially, getting the message, it's incredibly difficult to explain tangible numbers. I was asked once, well, how many fires were not this is structure fires, were avoided because of training or were lessened, the impact lessened because of training? How many less firefighters got injured this year because of training? I can't make that connection. There's not a metric. Oh, I added 3 new firefighters, therefore our response times went down blah, blah, blah. That's a metric you can do, but trying to equate training to reductions in anything is incredibly difficult.
But
You have Yeah.
even though you can't pick a number, isn't the answer all? Like, all incidents are better due to training. All responses are better due to training. All life-saving measures are better due to like, isn't that a direct correlation, even though there isn't a specific percentage that you can.
The metrics are what we are asked to give. I think you can correlate maybe community risk reduction to a reduction in the number of house fires. I think you can say we've put this much money there, and that year we had this fewer fires. It's harder to make that case for whatever reason with training. Again, I think it's the most important thing. I think it should rate high up there If you're going to give people PPE so that they're safe, they should probably know what to do with it. They should probably know how to wear it, what its limitations are, how to put water on the fire, not just have good hose, good nozzles, good PPE. But those things are a lot easier to explain. If I have an SCBA that properly fits me, I will be safer. Cool. That makes sense. I need 60 hours of firefighting, basic firefighter training. I struggle. Maybe somebody out there has a great idea on how to do it, but I've struggled. And I know other people have struggled to make that argument. And therefore, we haven't been able to crack into additional funds. And we've put together a strong team, 6 on the training side, 3 on the certification side, but that's barely a drop in the bucket for what we could do if we had more resources. And then you look at the department level and they all everybody's struggling with money as property taxes in Colorado are being lessened to try to help with affordability issues. You're also taking money away from the fire departments. And they got to figure out where they're going to come up with that change because Colorado's growing. There's more people, there's more aging people, there's more work for the fire service to do, and it continues to grow, yet our funding streams do not.
So, in an environment with limited resources that we're operating in, do most of your focus then go to like the Denvers and the Auroras and the West Metros and the bigger departments because they have the more people? And if I'm a small volunteer department in the outer reaches of Eastern Colorado, am I never going to see you?
No, in fact, quite the opposite. It's not that we think the bigger folks, the Lovelands, the South Metros, the Grand Junctions, it's not that they don't need assistance and they don't need help as well, but they have something. And we want to get to those areas that have limited to no access to some things. I think you can't say like volunteer career. I think it's rural. You're talking about the rural areas where they are smaller volunteer departments. They're still expected to do all the same things everybody else is expected to do with just less. And we want to make sure we're giving them the support we can. So if there's things we can teach to help them be more efficient with the limited amount of people, the limited amount of things, then that's where I think we should be focused. It's not, again, it's not that the big dogs don't need something. But I think with our limited resources, our focus to go back to where it all began in 2014, 2015 is with those whose first fire is a real fire.
Hmm.
And that's scary to me.
So
Not that
good
they
news though
do it,
for
not
the
not getting trained by their predecessors, but I just want to give them every advantage that they have to protect their community the best they can.
but good news for the hundreds of smaller departments across Colorado.
I hope so. I mean, we have our, Fire on the Plains, so I think we're in our 8th or 9th year. I mean, that's 10th year? I don't know. Got about 90 people coming to that, a bunch of classes, La Junta and Sterling each year, and that has been it's been great to see because although it says Fire on the Plains, we get firefighters from rural departments all across Colorado that come to that. It's good to see, and this year we're really focusing on our Rural Firefighter Essentials program, 2 Saturdays over 2 different months to try to support the volunteers that can't go to training during the day. I mean, that's where we wanna spend our time right now, and if we can grow, we will grow and support more.
Speaking of the hundreds of smaller fire departments, how many departments do you think there are in Colorado? And I'm asking because
Nobody
just
knows?
in the last episode, I asked Ken Watkins this. Well, I didn't even mean to ask it as a quiz question. I was just saying, "Hey, Ken, in the 330 some odd departments in Colorado," and he's like, "Well, those are the ones we know about. There could be up to 500." And I was like, "What? How do we not know?"
So when I was working through my EFO papers, I used the US Fire Administration census, which is somewhere around 200 and something.
Yeah.
Then because that's just voluntary reporting, and then I had some, data that said 340, and then I asked, Marlinda what we had, and that was a different number. So it's a moving target. I will say 320 just to split the difference, but, we it is a moving target. It
That's
is
so funny,
amazing
though.
we can't dial in that number. It's amazing.
So two wrap up questions. So you, in your role of working with departments across the state, however many there are, you have a unique vantage point. What's one leadership, just bringing it back to leadership here, what's one leadership habit or mindset that you wish more fire service leaders would focus on developing?
Mindset.
Learner's mindset.
That there are changes rapidly happening, and the traditions that we hold dear, which are critical to our identity as firefighters, as the fire service, can sometimes get in the way of seeing better ways of doing the job that are safer. That's ultimately all I care about. As I say, with anything I will talk to, long career, long retirement. Those are
There
the
you
two
go.
most important things to me.
All right. And last question. I like that answer, though. Last question. If you fast forward 10 years from now in DFPC in the Colorado Fire Service, I don't know what you're going to be doing, but what do you think that the fire service looks like 10 years from now?
That's a loaded question. I mean, there's so much changing so fast. I can't even begin to imagine what will pop out of the woodwork next year, let alone 10 years from now. I think we will be leaner. There just won't be as many volunteers. There won't be as many. We seem to see the numbers recruiting going down, but we will still be every bit as capable to address the needs that we are called upon to address through technology, through better training, better tools. We're going to find that place where we do more with less, but not at the expense of the firefighter. It's not just to burn them out, but we're gonna give them the tools to be able to do things we can't even imagine right now. Sending, heavy equipment up on a drone to get to wildland firefighters on the line. Who would have thought, 10 years ago that was a thing? So I think we don't even know what's coming around the corner, but we will be, smaller. Just
And
how we roll.
you could have said 10 years from now, we'll know how many departments there are in Colorado.
That'd be nice. That'd be good. I like that next year as we, get ready for our 2026, fire service needs assessment. It's always interesting what number we come up with how many fire departments, so we can give an accurate percentage of how many respond.
Lisa, thank you so much for joining me here today. I appreciate what you're doing to support training and leadership development and safety across the fire service here in Colorado and beyond. Your efforts are definitely helping strengthen departments and prepare the next generation of fire service leaders. So thank you for that. And thanks for being part of today's conversation. If something here resonated, pass it on to someone in your circle. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast, leave a quick review, and check out convergentimpact.com for more leadership resources like webinars, blog posts, and team tools designed specifically for the fire service. Until next time, lead well, take care of your people, and keep setting the example.
Here.